You're running slower than your grandmother walks, and you think it's working. That's the joke nobody tells you when you start MAF training. You strap on the heart rate monitor, you watch the number, and you slow down until you're basically shuffling through your own neighborhood while dog walkers pass you. And somewhere in your head, a voice says, "This is stupid. I used to run faster than this without trying. Why am I paying attention to a chest strap like it's my boss?" Here's the thing. That voice isn't wrong to ask the question. It's wrong about the answer. Let's talk about it like adults, not like a fitness influencer trying to sell you a plan. MAF stands for maximum aerobic function. Phil Maffetone built it around a formula, 180 minus your age, with adjustments up or down depending on your health and training history. That number becomes your ceiling heart rate for almost every run you do, not your average, your ceiling. You stay under it, no matter how embarrassing the pace feels. And for most runners who've spent years running everything at a moderate hard effort, that ceiling forces them into something close to a jog walk. Ego bruised, pace destroyed, patience tested. So the real question isn't, does MAF work? The real question is the one buried in your video title. How long do you actually do this, and when do you stop? Let's get the reality check out of the way first, because I'm not going to blow smoke at you. Aerobic adaptation is slow. Painfully, unglamorously slow. There's a well-documented physiological process where sustained low-intensity training increases mitochondrial density and capillary density in your muscle fibers. This has been shown in exercise physiology research going back decades, including work published in the Journal of Applied Physiology on endurance training adaptations. More mitochondria means more aerobic energy production without leaning on glycogen and lactate. More capillaries means more oxygen delivered to the muscle that's actually working. None of that happens in 2 weeks. It happens over months, sometimes 3 to 6 months, of consistent low heart rate volume because you're rebuilding infrastructure inside your muscle cells, not just improving a skill. That's fact number one, and it's the one nobody puts on a motivational Instagram graphic because it's not sexy. Nobody wants to hear, "Give it a season." Everybody wants to hear, "Unlock your fastest 5K in 21 days. Now here's where it gets interesting, and here's your first gut check for the video. What if the slowness isn't the punishment? What if the slowness is the entire mechanism? Sit with that for a second. Most runners come to MAF broken in one specific way. They've built what Maffetone used to call an anaerobic dominant engine. Every run is a little too fast. Every easy day creeps into moderate. The nervous system gets addicted to a certain level of huffing and puffing because that's the only intensity that ever felt like training to them. So when you force the heart rate down, you're not just changing pace, you're detoxing a habit. And like any detox, the first weeks feel worse before they feel better. This is usually where people quit. Week 2, week 3. They see their MAF pace sitting at 11-12 minutes a mile, sometimes worse if they're overweight, stressed, undertrained, or sleep deprived, all of which push that ceiling heart rate down into embarrassing pace territory. They compare it to their 5K PR pace, and they spiral. They think the method is broken. It's not broken. Your aerobic system is just showing you the truth you've been outrunning for years. Let me ask you something you probably haven't asked yourself. When's the last time you ran a full week without your legs feeling heavy by Thursday? If the answer is, I can't remember, that's not a coincidence. That's chronic low-grade anaerobic stress accumulating with nowhere to drain. So how long do you actually stay in this MAF phase? Here's the honest answer: no hedging. Maffetone himself talked about a minimum of 3 to 4 months for someone with a genuinely dysfunctional aerobic base, and some case examples he documented, including elite athletes like Mark Allen, the 6-time Ironman world champion, took closer to a year of almost exclusively low heart rate training before real breakthroughs showed up in racing performance. Mark Allen was getting beaten constantly by Dave Scott before restructuring his training around this aerobic-first approach with Maffetone, and the payoff eventually became 6 Kona titles. That's not a hype story. That's documented triathlon history. It's slow, it's boring. And it worked because he trusted a process that felt, for months, like it was making him worse. That's your second real data point, and I want you to notice something about it. It's not a study, it's a real career with real losses before the wins. Physiology doesn't care about your training log ego, it cares about consistent stimulus over time. But And this is the part almost nobody says out loud, MAF is not meant to be forever. This is where the video title gets its teeth. If you're still doing 100% of your training under your MAF ceiling 2 years into your running life, you're not building a base anymore. You're avoiding discomfort. You're hiding inside a training method because it feels safe, structured, defensible. I'm just following the science becomes an excuse to never test yourself. Here's the blunt version. MAF is a foundation phase, not a lifestyle. The aerobic base is the floor you build the house on. Nobody lives permanently in the foundation. At some point, you have to put walls up. That means introducing threshold work, intervals, tempo runs, the stuff that actually improves your race day speed once the aerobic engine underneath it is solid. Skip that phase entirely, and you'll have an efficient, patient, wonderfully aerobic runner who has no idea how to hold discomfort at race pace. You'll get passed in the last mile by someone with half your base and twice your grit. So when do you know you're ready to graduate out of pure MAF work? There's a practical marker Maffetone himself used, and coaches still track it today, the MAF test. You run a fixed distance, say 5 kilometers, at your MAF heart rate, on a similar course, roughly every few weeks, and you track the pace. If your pace at that same heart rate keeps improving over consecutive tests, say your ceiling heart rate used to get you 11-minute miles, and now it's getting you 9:30 miles. Your aerobic engine is genuinely growing. That's the sign the base is solidifying, and it usually shows up somewhere between 8 and 16 weeks in a runner who's consistent. But here's the twist that catches people off guard. Once that curve flattens out, once 3 or 4 consecutive tests show almost no improvement, that flattening isn't failure. That's the signal. That's your engine telling you it has absorbed what it can absorb from pure aerobic stress alone. Staying under the ceiling past that point has diminishing returns. This is precisely the point where you start layering in controlled anaerobic work. Without abandoning the aerobic volume you built, you don't throw away the foundation. You build on it. Let's talk about the emotional side for a second, because that's the part coaches skip, and it's the part that actually makes people quit. There is a very specific kind of shame in running slower than you used to run. In public, in your own neighborhood, past people who know you as the runner. Your brain treats pace like status. Slowing down feels like demotion. I've had athletes tell me they started running at 5 a.m., specifically so nobody would see their MAF pace. Let that sink in. Grown adults hiding from their own neighbors because their heart rate monitor told them to walk up a hill. That shame is not a signal to quit. That shame is ego friction. And ego friction is exactly what separates runners who build durable careers from runners who burn out chasing pace they haven't earned yet. So here's the practical solution. And I'm going to keep this simple because you don't need a spreadsheet. You need a decision framework. First, give yourself a real window, not a vibe. 8 weeks minimum before you even evaluate whether it's working. Second, run your MAF test every 2 to 3 weeks on the same loop, same conditions if possible, and log the pace. That number is your only permission slip to change anything. Not your ego, not your Strava feed, the number. Third, the moment you get 3 consecutive flat tests, that's your cue to start adding 1 structured hard session a week, not 5, 1, while keeping the rest of your mileage aerobic. Fourth, if life stress, poor sleep, or illness is dragging your MAF pace backward, that's not the method failing. That's your body reporting real data about real problems outside of running. Adjust life before you abandon the training philosophy. And here's the moment I want you to actually sit with, the aha that should follow you into your next run. MAF was never really about heart rate. Heart rate is just the ruler. What MAF actually measures is honesty. It's the one training method that makes it physically impossible to lie to yourself about your fitness, because your watch will beep the second your ego tries to sneak the pace up. Every other form of training lets you fudge it a little, run a bit harder than planned, call it a good day. MAF doesn't let you cheat. That's why it's uncomfortable, not because it's ineffective, because it's the most honest mirror you'll ever run in front of. So next time you head out and that number creeps up a beat too soon, don't ask, why am I so out of shape? Ask, what is today revealing about me that yesterday's harder pace was hiding? That question will change how you run more than any formula ever will. And that question is exactly where most runners stop asking, because the honest answer is uncomfortable. It's easier to blame the formula than to sit with what your own body is telling you. But the runners who actually get faster long term, the ones who are still running strong at 45 instead of nursing a stress fracture at 29, they're the ones who let that discomfort teach them something instead of running from it. Let's zoom out for a second, because I want to hit you with a number that might rearrange how you think about all of this. Somewhere around 80% of the volume that elite distance runners actually train, not race train, sits at a low, conversational, aerobic intensity. This is the same 80-20 polarized pattern you'll see in physiology research on elite endurance athletes across sports, from Kenyan marathoners to Norwegian cross-country skiers. The fastest humans on the planet, the ones running paces you'll never touch in your life, are spending the overwhelming majority of their training weeks doing exactly what you're doing on your MAF runs right now. Slow, controlled, almost boring. The difference between you and them isn't that they skip the slow stuff to go fast. It's that they've done the slow stuff for years at a volume you haven't gotten close to yet, and then they layer a small percentage of brutal, precise intensity on top of that mountain of patience. Sit with that. The thing that feels like the beginner phase. The thing that feels like you're doing something wrong because it's too easy. That is, almost identically, what the best runners in the world are doing on a Tuesday morning. You're not behind. You're early in the same process they're still doing, just with a smaller base underneath it. So here's where I want to leave you, because this is the part that actually matters more than the formula. MAF isn't a punishment phase you endure until you're allowed to run fast again. It's not a purgatory between the runner you were and the runner you're trying to become. It's infrastructure. It's the electrical wiring behind the walls of a house nobody sees but everybody depends on. You don't rip it out once the house looks nice. You maintain it quietly in the background for the rest of your running life. Even after you've added the speed work, even after you've hit your PRs, even after your MAF pace finally matches the pace you used to run without a monitor. The plateaus you hit 2 years from now, 3 years from now, the ones that make you want to quit running altogether, 9 times out of 10, the fix isn't a new interval workout. It's going back to the boring aerobic runs you thought you'd graduated from. The base never stops being the base. You just stop noticing it's working once it's working well. And that's the real answer to the question in this video's title. How long do you do MAF training, and until when? You do the strict, disciplined version in PO, every run under the ceiling, no exceptions, for that first 8 to 16 week window until your test pace either shows clear improvement or flattens out completely. Once it flattens, you don't abandon it, you evolve it. You keep roughly 80% of your weekly volume aerobic permanently for as long as you want to run without breaking down, and you spend the other slice earning the speed on top of that foundation. There's no finish line where you graduate from aerobic training. There's only the day you stop needing to think about it, because it's become who you are as a runner instead of a rule you're forcing yourself to follow. Next time your watch beeps and tells you to slow down, don't hear it as a limitation. Hear it as the most patient coach you'll ever have, quietly building something in you that no interval session could build on its own. All right, next episode, we're going somewhere almost nobody talks about, and it's going to change how you think about every single run you do for the rest of the year. The core training that can transform your running, still in 2026. And no, it's not sit-ups. And no, it's not what your gym trainer told you. If you've ever felt your form fall apart in the last mile of a hard run, that episode is for you. If this hit home, hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Drop a like if you've ever hidden your MAF pace from a stranger on the trail. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. Share this with a one running buddy who needs to hear it slower than fast. And if you want the full structured plan behind everything in this video, become a member through the link pinned in the comments.